3.5 hours now to the kickoff of when party leaders face off in the last debate of the federal election. Affordability, one of the topics on the agenda tonight. And you know what? That includes cell phones and internet bills.
If they are not bringing down those prices, we will bring in much more competition so that they drive down the prices for Canadians. So it's up to the telcos to either do this, or we will make sure they do this in the way they don't want, which is to bring in more competition.
We can fix it. We can stand up to the big telco companies and say they should stop charging these high rates. This is something fully within the federal government to do. We can cap the fees. We can save people money.
A big reason for high cell phone bills is a lack of competition. We need more players in the Canadian market to help improve wireless choice and affordability for consumers.
Let's cut through the promises and really get down to what's happening. Laura Tribe is with Open Media. It's an organization that aims to keep internet access affordable. She is in Ottawa. Hi, Laura. Okay, every time we go through an election, we talk about affordability, cost of living, and it seems like cell phone bills are something lots of Canadians complain about, so the political party leaders feel it's a thing for them to talk about. Your impression, or rather, are you impressed by anything you've heard from the federal parties?
Not very, so far, is the short answer. I mean, in the 2019 election, cell phone affordability was really a huge part of most of the party's platforms. We've seen it resurface again this election cycle, and particularly in the NDP platform, with some mention as well from the Conservatives. But the Liberals, who actually made it the biggest deal for the past 2 years, seem to have completely walked away from it. And so I think, given all the other priorities on the table, it's a little discouraging to see that at the end of a year and a half of pandemic, where the internet has been keeping us all connected, that some of the most critical tools are not really being given the attention they deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we're talking about cell phone and internet costs, as you're well noting. The Conservative leader, Aaron O'Toole, said that he would open the market to other international carriers. There were a big asterisk, like only if they're opening their markets to our companies. What do you make of that? Is that something that would actually make a difference?
No, is the short answer. I mean, I think there are a lot of simpler solutions we can put into place. There are a number of companies in Canada that would love to enter our cell phone market, but both the current government and the CRTC have kind of prevented them through current regulations. And so I think before we go opening up our market up to even bigger companies like AT&T or Verizon, which further the size of our big telecom companies, we actually need to look at who exists here that's trying to get into the market, and why aren't we supporting Canadian companies in doing that? And there's a lot of really simple policy changes in our telecom policy that the Liberals promised in the last election but failed to do, but I think also would really serve a lot of small, struggling Canadian internet providers to actually bring in the competition, because the likelihood of a large US company coming in and starting from scratch to build their own cell phone network is pretty slim. Most of the spectrum has been allocated already to the existing big telecom companies, and that's a really big investment for a pretty small market compared to something like the US. So they're most likely to come in and try and buy out Bell, Telus, or Rogers, which is really the opposite of what we need, which is more choice, more providers, and more variety of services.
Yeah, and the Conservative leader has said he would not look fondly on, I mean, he hasn't been exact in his language, but it seemed like he was saying he wouldn't look fondly on a giant merger among the telecoms like that. From the NDP, we've heard from Jagmeet Singh that he would work with the CRTC, he says, to reduce prices and cap fees. Can he do that?
He can do that. And this is part of the NDP platform in 2019 as well, to really work on setting those retail rates. So bringing, the prices that we pay down from $50 a month to $40 a month, or whatever the case may be. That is possible, and it is something they can work with the CRTC to mandate the CRTC to do. I think the trick, again, is that it doesn't get at the fact that we don't actually have enough choice of providers in the market in the first place. And Canada is so far behind when it comes to our international counterparts that it's really great that the NDP is promising to bring us in line with those international counterparts, but their prices keep falling, and they're falling because there is increased competition and because technology is just making it cheaper to deliver those services. And if we're setting a fixed rate, it's really hard to guarantee that we'll keep up with the rest of our counterparts and bring those prices down without bringing in different plans, different providers. And so again, I think we really need to look at how do we support those smaller providers in Canada to compete with Bell, TELUS, and Rogers.
And when you say the smaller providers, I mean, you're talking, there are some companies out there, the MVNOs, and the idea that they would use another company's, a big telco's infrastructure, they'd be able to buy it at wholesale rates and pass the savings on to us, right?
Exactly. I mean, a big challenge in starting up a new cell phone company in Canada, which is what we saw with Wind, which is now Freedom, owned by Shaw, which is being sold to Rogers, is that that's a really big investment. And these major companies have had such a head start. They've had decades of government support. They've had monopolies that have been sanctioned by the government on these regions. And to try and build that network against those companies without actually being able to sell services until the network's built is really unrealistic. And so instead, letting these small companies actually lease services for the existing infrastructure gives them a way to enter the market, but also, fairly pays those companies who built those networks for the services that they've built. This is not a free ride by any stretch of the imagination. They're paying to access it, but the plans they offer might look a little different because they're catering to different markets. And I think that's what we're hearing a lot at Open Media from our supporters, is that they really want different types of plans, because having three very similar options across the market isn't giving us what we want.
Okay, so we're really talking about how much you pay for cell phone bills, for internet bills. The Liberals have been citing a StatsCan report that says consumer prices for cell services decreased by 21.5% from June of last year to June of this year. Is that something to celebrate?
It's in the right direction. We saw the Liberals promise that if it didn't come down by at least 25%, they were going to mandate MVNOs, and that is not 25%. But additionally, even when they made that promise, we were hearing from companies like Bell themselves that they knew prices were coming down, because it's just getting cheaper for these companies based on technological advances to deliver gigabytes of data to customers. And so we've seen that trend globally. Everyone's prices are coming down because technology is making it cheaper. Nothing's changed. No one has done anything, and there's nothing to guarantee this trend continues. And I think what's been really frustrating to hear, in particular from Prime Minister Trudeau last night, was, comments like, if big telecom doesn't lower their prices, we'll step in. Because that was the exact promise we heard 2 years ago, almost to the day. And they haven't come down the 25% we've been promised. They haven't stepped in, and they haven't done anything. And so I think that's where, this goes far beyond cell phone services. This has to look at home internet services, rural and remote connectivity. There is so much that still needs to be done, that seeing these huge gaps, particularly in the Liberal platform, when they've spent so much time focused on it, is really concerning as to what that looks like when they set their priorities, should they form the next government.
All right, Laura, we'll make sure to check in with you before whenever the next election is, see if things are going in the right direction. Thanks a lot.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.